When I was 31, I bought what my real estate agent called a forever home. She actually used those words in the listing. Your forever home awaits. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, 2,800 square feet, finished basement, fenced backyard, 2-car garage, cul-de-sac, in a neighborhood with good schools. I didn't have kids. I didn't have a partner. I was a single guy buying a 4-bedroom house because my agent said I was buying for the future. And my parents said it was the smartest financial decision I'd ever make. The purchase price was $385,000. My mortgage was $2,200 a month. I remember the closing table had this weird laminated wood finish, the kind that's trying to look expensive, but you can tell it isn't. The agent handed me a pen with her company logo on it. I signed 14 pages. Nobody explained a single one of them. And I walked out thinking I'd just done the smartest thing of my life. 18 months later, I was sitting in my car in the driveway at 11 p.m., staring at the house and feeling something I couldn't name at first. Dread. Not because anything terrible had happened, but because I'd slowly realized that this house, this thing everyone told me was an asset, had quietly become the single biggest obstacle between me and the life I actually wanted. And the craziest part? The mortgage wasn't even the main problem. Before I tell you the full story, I want to show you 2 numbers: $600,000 and $2.1 million. Those are the 2 retirement outcomes that were available to me based on one single decision: keep the house or sell. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which path you're on right now, and it might make you uncomfortable. My name is Tom. I eventually sold that house at a loss, moved into a place half the size, and started building real wealth for the first time in my adult life. Subscribe if you've ever felt trapped by a home that's supposed to be your greatest achievement. Because what I'm about to break down is not a rent versus buy argument. This is about why the concept of the forever home is one of the most dangerous financial ideas in American culture, and how the square footage of your house is quietly deciding whether you build wealth or work until you can't anymore. Here's what I wish someone had told me before I signed. The purchase price of a house is roughly half of what that house will actually cost you. And I'm not exaggerating. I'm not rounding up for dramatic effect. I mean it literally. My mortgage was $2,200 a month. That's the number I plugged into my budget. But the actual monthly cost of living in that house was just north of $4,000. Let me walk you through where the other $1,800 came from, because this is the math I never did before buying, and I'm betting most of you haven't done it either. Property tax on a $385,000 home in my county was $4,600 a year, which works out to about $383 a month. Insurance was $2,600 a year because of weather risk in my region, another $217 a month. Utilities. This one caught me completely off guard. Heating and cooling 2,800 square feet is not a minor line item. My electric bill in July was $380. In January, the gas bill hit $310. Averaged over 12 months, roughly $480 a month. HOA was $175 a month for a community pool I went to exactly once, the day I moved in. And then maintenance. This is the quiet killer. The rule of thumb is 1 to 2% of your home's value per year. Some years nothing breaks. Some years the HVAC dies on the hottest day of the year and you're writing an $8,000 check you didn't budget for. Averaged out, call it $400 a month. If you're watching this on your phone, pause and look at the screen for a second, because I want you to see these numbers laid out. I was making about $72,000 a year. After taxes, roughly $54,000 take-home. That's $4,500 a month. The house was consuming $4,000 of it. I had $500 left for food, gas, clothes, haircuts, everything a person needs to not die. I wasn't saving a dime. My 401k was at 0 contributions because I needed every dollar just to keep the lights on in rooms I wasn't even using. That's not homeownership. I don't know what that is, but it's not that. Here's something nobody in real estate will volunteer. Every extra square foot in your house comes with a recurring cost that never stops and never goes down. Bigger house means more air to heat and cool. Bigger house means more roof to replace. Bigger house means higher assessed value, which means higher property taxes forever. Bigger house means higher replacement cost, which means higher insurance forever. More carpet, more plumbing, more things that can break. The Census Bureau says the median new American home peaked at about 2,467 square feet in 2015 and has since dropped to around 2,150 by 2024. But here's the thing. Even though homes are getting smaller, prices per square foot have gone up roughly 74% in the last decade. So every unnecessary room now hurts you twice. You overpay to buy it, and then you overpay every month to keep it. I did a calculation after I sold that still makes me a little queasy. For the 3 years I owned that 2,800 square foot home, I regularly used about 1,100 square feet. Bedroom, kitchen, 1 bathroom, living room. That's where I actually lived. The other 1,700 square feet? The formal dining room, the guest bedrooms, the finished basement? I entered those rooms maybe twice a month, usually to vacuum. I was paying to heat, cool, insure, tax, and maintain 1,700 square feet of space that served no function in my daily life except storing boxes I still hadn't opened since the move. According to Harvard's Joint Center for Housing Studies, the typical American household now spends over 30% of income on housing, well above the 25% that most planners recommend. And a huge chunk of that gap, the difference between 25 and 30-something percent, is driven by people carrying space they don't use. That's not a housing crisis. That's a square footage crisis. Let's talk about where this phrase even comes from. Forever home. Sounds warm, right? Sounds stable. Sounds like something a responsible adult does. It's also one of the most effective selling tools in the real estate agent's vocabulary because it does something very specific to your brain. It makes you buy for the someday. The someday kids, the someday partner, the someday dinner parties, holiday gatherings, backyard barbecues with the neighbors. And the problem is, someday costs you real money every single day between now and whenever it shows up. If it shows up. I bought a 4-bedroom house for a family I didn't have yet. 3 years later, I still didn't have that family. I had a guest room nobody slept in, an office I never used because I liked working at the kitchen table, and a finished basement that became, and I'm being completely honest here, a graveyard. An elliptical machine I rode for 11 weeks, a poker table from college, 3 bins of winter clothes I rotated seasonally with 3 bins of summer clothes, a dehumidifier that ran 24/7 so the carpet wouldn't grow mold. I was paying full residential rates to run a climate-controlled storage unit inside my own house. You know what actual self-storage costs in most cities? About $100 a month for a 10 by 10. I was paying multiples of that for the privilege of keeping my junk downstairs. And here's what really gets me. That guest bedroom used 12 nights in 3 years. 12. You do the math on what I paid per night to keep that room available, and it's around $500. I could have put my parents up at a Marriott and still come out ahead. A 2025 Bankrate survey found that 45% of American homeowners have at least one regret about buying. The number one regret? Maintenance and hidden costs being more expensive than expected. And the age group with the most regret is 30 to 40, which is exactly when most people buy their forever home. That's not a coincidence. That's the math catching up to the marketing. The smarter play, and I say this as someone who learned the expensive way, is to buy for who you are today, not who you might be in 8 years. If your life changes, you move. The transaction cost is real, usually 8 to 10% of the sale price. But it's a one-time hit. The ongoing cost of living in a house that's too big? That's a monthly hit that never stops. Over a decade, the monthly drain wins by a mile, and it's not close. The thing that finally broke me was a spreadsheet. I'm serious. One night, couldn't sleep, opened my laptop, and ran 2 scenarios side by side. It took me about 45 minutes, and by the end, I was just sitting there in the dark, staring at the screen. Scenario 1. Stay in the house. Keep paying $4,000 a month. Save and invest nothing. Hope the house appreciates enough over 30 years to justify the cost. Scenario 2. Sell. Take whatever equity is left, move into a smaller place, invest the monthly difference. Here's what the numbers said, and I want to be transparent about the assumptions. I used roughly 3% annual appreciation for the house, which is roughly in line with the Case-Shiller index over the long term, and about 8% for the investment portfolio, which is a conservative estimate of what you'd get in a total stock market index fund after inflation. In scenario 1, after 30 years, I'd own a paid-off house worth maybe $600,000. That's it. That's my retirement. A house I can't eat, can't spend without selling, and that still costs me $15,000 a year just in taxes, insurance, and maintenance, even after the mortgage is gone. In scenario 2, I'd spend about $2,200 a month on housing instead of $4,000, invest the $1,800 difference, and after 30 years, that portfolio would be worth roughly $2.1 million. Even without ever building a single dollar of home equity. The portfolio crushes the house by over $1 million. Quick note here, I'm not a licensed financial advisor. I'm just a guy who made expensive mistakes and got really into spreadsheets afterward. Always run your own numbers and talk to a professional before you make a major financial move. Okay, back to the story. That spreadsheet is why I sold. I listed the house, took a loss of about $12,000 after transaction costs, moved into a 1,000 square foot apartment, and started investing $1,800 a month for the first time in my adult life. That was the most profitable loss I ever took. I want to pause for a second and tell you something that has nothing to do with math. When I told my mom I was selling the house, she cried. Like actually cried. Not dramatic crying, just this quiet, disappointed crying that's almost worse. She said I was throwing away everything I'd worked for. She said her friends would ask what happened. She said she just told everyone at church that her son bought a house. And I didn't know how to explain to her that the thing she was so proud of was the exact thing that was keeping me broke. That her version of my success was my actual cage. I'm not telling you this to be dramatic. I'm telling you because if you ever decide to downsize, or if you're sitting there right now thinking, maybe I should sell, you need to know that the pushback is coming. Not from the market, not from the bank, from the people who love you. They'll tell you you're being reckless. They'll tell you you're going backward. They'll say things that hit you in places a spreadsheet can't reach. You need to be ready for that. And you need to know that it's okay to do it anyway. Something unexpected happened after the move. My stress didn't drop gradually, it dropped overnight. I remember the first Sunday morning in the new apartment, I woke up and just lay there for a second trying to figure out what was different. And then I realized I wasn't dreading anything. No mental checklist of what might break. No utility bill anxiety. No guilt about rooms I couldn't fill. The Sunday scaries were gone. I literally made coffee and sat on my one couch in my one living room and just felt light. I don't know how else to describe it. My life got smaller in square footage and bigger in every other dimension. I had time because weekends weren't eaten by yard work and Home Depot trips. I had money because my housing cost was cut roughly in half. And I had options. Real options. Like the option to say no to projects at work I didn't believe in because I wasn't chained to a mortgage that demanded my entire paycheck to survive. I'm not here to tell anyone never to buy a house. Buying can absolutely make sense. But it makes sense under specific conditions, not as a blanket cultural rule that everybody follows because their parents said so. Here's how I think about it now. Total housing costs should stay under 25% of your take-home pay. Not 30, Not 35, 25. And total means everything: mortgage, taxes, insurance, utilities, HOA, and a realistic maintenance budget. If you only count the mortgage when you calculate affordability, you're lying to yourself the same way I did for 3 years. Buy for your life right now, not your life in a decade. Single? You don't need 4 bedrooms. Couple with no kids? You don't need a bonus room. If life changes, change the house. The whole forever home concept assumes your life is static. Nobody's life is static. Stop paying today for a version of yourself that doesn't exist yet. Before you sign anything, calculate the opportunity cost. Take the monthly difference between the house you want and the smallest place that meets your actual needs. Multiply by 12. Run a compound interest calculator for 20 years at 8%. If that number makes you feel something, pay attention to that feeling. It's your future self trying to tell you something. And maybe most importantly, treat every extra room as a subscription, not a feature. A listing says bonus room. Your budget should say $200 per month recurring charge. Would you pay $150 a month for a formal dining room you use 4 times a year? Probably not. But that's exactly what you're doing when you buy a house with rooms you don't need. And unlike Netflix, you can't cancel with one click. Here's where I am now. I live in a 1,050 square foot apartment, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. Total housing cost is about $1,900 a month, all in. I invest $1,800 every month automatically into an index fund. My net worth has grown more in the last 4 years than it did in the previous 10, and every room in my apartment gets used every day. Last Thanksgiving, a buddy of mine, the one who bought a big house right around the same time I bought mine, was at my place for dinner. We were standing in my kitchen, which you can basically see the entire apartment from, and he was venting. Property taxes went up again. His wife wanted to go back to school, but they couldn't afford to lose her income because of the mortgage. He said he felt stuck. He looked around my place, this little apartment with the 1 couch and the small dining table where 6 of us were about to eat turkey, and he said, "You know, I think you might have figured something out that the rest of us missed." I didn't figure anything out. I did a spreadsheet. A house is a place to live. That's it. It's not a personality. It's not a scoreboard. And if the place you live is preventing you from building the financial life you want, then the place is the problem, no matter how nice the kitchen looks or how impressed your coworkers are when they visit. If you're in a house that's eating your paycheck right now, run the numbers tonight. Add up the true total monthly cost. Compare it to what you'd pay in a smaller place. Multiply the difference by 12 and then by 20. That number is either going to make you angry or it's going to make you move. Either way, at least you'll know the truth. Drop your total housing cost as a percentage of your take-home pay in the comments. The real number. Don't round down. I'll tell you whether that percentage is building you wealth or quietly eating it. Subscribe because next week we're getting into the portfolio structure I use to make those monthly investments actually compound. See you in the next one.